sports really well.
The story of Michaela Schifrin's game-changing reign at the top of the slopes when we go person to person.
The Israel-Hamas war. Stay with CBS News for continuing coverage.
CBS News, 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
Tonight, could a powerful storm system disrupt your Thanksgiving travel? Then, the 10 grocery foods most likely to put you at risk of food poisoning, and what a CEO shakeup in the tech world means for the popular ChatGPT app on the CBS.
We can restore that honesty, integrity, openness, confidence in government that we so sorely need in Washington today. The next president of the United States, my husband, Jimmy Carter.
We're going to make the jobs in this state very easy. We're going to take over that border, and we're going to make it. We had the most secure border in our history.
I hereby pardon Liberty Ann Bell.
Hello, I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington, D.C. Welcome to America Decides, a new move to try to stem the flow of migrants into the U.S. Sources tell CBS News the Biden administration is planning to deploy U.S. immigration officials to Panama to help local authorities screen and deport migrants. The Central American country is a key transit point for people who are hoping to reach the southern border of the U.S. The Department of Homeland Security has identified a team that will be dispatched there once a final agreement is reached. This year alone, more than 450,000 migrants have crossed a rugged jungle that connects Panama with South America called the Darien Gap. That is a major increase compared to last year, according to Panamanian government data. CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez broke this story, and he joins us now from Mission, Texas. Hi to you, Camilo. Explain to us how exactly this would work. If you've got 500,000 people crossing the Darien Gap, it seems like you'd need to send hundreds of U.S. agents to even make a dent in that flow of humans heading north.
That is a critical question, Nancy. U.S. officials tell CBS News that the Department of Homeland Security has already internally identified a team of asylum officers and deportation agents who will be sent to Panama to help that Central American country screen migrants for humanitarian protection and also to deport those who don't qualify. And it is part of an effort to reduce the flow of migrants into the notorious Darien Gap. Nancy, that is that jungle, a once impenetrable jungle, I should underscore, that divides Panama and Colombia, and it is now a major transit route for hundreds of thousands of migrants hoping to reach the U.S. Almost 500,000 people have crossed that jungle, including about 50% of them being children and women this year alone on foot. That is a once unthinkable number, Nancy, for this jungle where many years this was unpenetrable. And it is an illustration, Nancy, this effort is that the Biden administration is willing to take unprecedented initiatives to try to reduce these unprecedented levels of migration here along the U.S.-Mexico border. In just fiscal year 2023, Border Patrol recorded over 2 million migrant apprehensions here. That is only the second time in U.S. history that has ever happened, Nancy.
Recognition, obviously, that they need to do something differently, Camilo, but how exactly would this work? I mean, these migrants are walking through this thick jungle, as you pointed out. They're not walking through Panama City and stopping in at a U.S. government office. So how exactly would they, would they apprehend these individuals? And then what would they do? Just say, okay, you get to continue on your journey and you need to go back to your home country?
Well, once migrants get out of the Darien jungle on foot, they are typically encountered by United Nations officials and Panamanian officials. The objective of this operation, Nancy, is to have those Panamanian officials screen these migrants, stop them, and decide whether or not they qualify for protection in Panama. And if they don't qualify for asylum in Panama, then the U.S. goal is to have those migrants deported to their home countries like Venezuela. And again, it is designed to reduce that flow into Central America before the migrants reach the U.S.-Mexico border.
This is really interesting. What does the Panamanian government think about this? Why are they willing to cooperate with the U.S. in this way? And which of the migrants from which countries would be most likely to be allowed to continue on?
It's another critical question, Nancy. I was told by U.S. officials that the Panamanian government, I should say, requested this assistance specifically. They asked the U.S. for money, for employees and staffing and resources to bolster its deportation efforts because in fiscal year 2012, Panama only saw about 2,000 migrants cross the Darien jungle. Now it is 500,000. So the migration flows into that country have changed dramatically, and that's why that country is now requesting this help. In terms of who will be affected by this operation, Nancy, it will most likely be Venezuelan migrants. The vast majority of the migrants crossing the Darien jungle are from Venezuela, about 90% of them. And so many of these migrants are leaving that economic crisis in Venezuela. And this is yet another effort that the administration has taken to reduce the flow of migration from Venezuela. I think you can recall, Nancy, that just a few weeks ago, the Biden administration started sending deportation flights to Venezuela for the first time in U.S. history.
It's a really intriguing notion. It'll be fascinating to watch and see if it works. Camilo Montoya Galvez at the U.S.-Mexico border, thank you so much. Tributes are pouring in for former First Lady Rosalynn Carter. She died in her home in Plains, Georgia on Sunday at the age of 96. The former First Lady was instrumental in shaping the role of the president's spouse. She championed research into mental health during her time at the White House, and she was also a trusted advisor to her husband, former President Jimmy Carter. Both of them were awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1999.
Well, Jimmy and I have had great opportunities. We've been very privileged. The American people have given us unlimited chances, unlimited opportunities.
During a speech at the White House today, President Biden spoke about her legacy.
We'll also think about the loved ones we lost, including just yesterday when we lost former First Lady Rosalynn Carter, who walked her own path, inspiring a nation and the world along the way.
Historian and documentarian Andrew Oak joins us now. Andrew, not only do you study First Ladies, but you also knew Rosalynn Carter. So I'm wondering what this weekend was like for you and what you're thinking about when you think about Rosalynn Carter.
Well, I'm sad like everyone else at the loss, but more so I'm not necessarily mourning. I'm celebrating a life of 96 years of love with President Carter and 96 years of service to the American people and people all over the globe. She did unprecedented things that other First Ladies hadn't touched yet and brought some of the subjects like mental illness and things that we've talked about tirelessly. This is a woman who celebrated even a more prolific post-White House life than nearly every other First Lady in history. And the advantage and the power of the Carters was the power of two, because they're virtually inseparable in life, personal and professional, and in their public service.
How do you think she shaped the role of a First Lady, not just while she was in office, but then the role of a First Lady or a first couple once they leave office?
Well, typically a First Lady will pick a cause or a couple causes. Mrs. Carter seemed tireless. Of course, she started out with mental health, as we mentioned, and mental health is a key because no one else was talking about it at this point. It's kind of like Betty Ford was talking about breast cancer and addiction when people didn't talk about that. Mrs. Carter talked about a subject that was taboo, a subject that was in the closets, swept under the carpet. And by bringing that out in light and making it acceptable just to talk about, that would be enough. But she went on to be on board of directors and part of symposiums and associations with psychological and mental health and medical and journalistic writing of mental health. She really just stopped at nothing to get this issue out there and improved upon.
And why was it that she grabbed onto that particular issue?
I think it was something that she recognized that wasn't getting the attention that it needed, and something that was very serious, like addiction or cancer or something like that. But no one was championing this very, very important issue that continues to plague us in society today.
Right.
And there would be no discussions about this like we're having today, or help that we would have, if Mrs. Carter hadn't opened up the door and started the conversation.
And then, of course, all the humanitarian work that she and her husband did once they left office.
Habitat for Humanity. I mean, we saw the Carters in not the best physical condition, still wearing tool belts and swinging hammers and wearing hard hats. I've been to Plains. I know the family. I know the community. I know the relatives. It's such a wonderful community, a wonderful town, and the support group down there that has always championed these efforts and pitched in. But this goes across the country. This goes around the globe, of people that really could get on board, because the Carters were so sincere. And their work was walking the walk and talking the talk. And like I say, swinging the hammers and things like Habitat for Humanity. And that can't help but be infectious, and you want to contribute and help given their efforts.
I thought that Jimmy Carter's tribute was so lovely this weekend when he said that as long as she was alive, I knew that somebody loved me. And also making sure to point out that all of his successes were her successes, too, because she was there with him every step of the way.
They're really, you know, I've studied every First Lady, Martha Washington through Dr. Jill Biden. And I've always tried to separate those women from their husbands' accomplishments and take them on their own. There's no separating Rosalynn and President Carter. Even now in death, they're still together. There's no separation here. And the two have been together 77 years married, but also she supported all his efforts and his philanthropies and his political and personal aspirations. And he did the same for her, always giving each other credit for the work that each of them did on their own, and then celebrating the work that they did together.
And you knew her later in life. Talk a little bit about what that relationship was like and what her personality was like behind the scenes.
One of the nicest ladies I've ever met, really. I was with her and the family on her birthday last year in Plains, Georgia. And I was honored to be able to give her a signed set of my books for her birthday. I gave her the book. She said, thank you so much. I told her a little bit about the C-SPAN project. She had done an interview for the C-SPAN series that I produced with a team of incredible people there at C-SPAN and the White House Historical Association. But the purpose of the event was to dedicate this butterfly statue. 18 butterflies on the statue, beautifully done by a sculptor named Peter Hazel, 18 to represent the 18th of August when she was born. And her sister, Alethea, took her over with her walker to light the statue for the first time. I was just trying to stay out of the way. And as she was walking past lighting it, she looked over and saw me again, and she reached over and she grabbed my hand so tenderly, but firmly, still strong in her 90s, had a good grip on me, and said, thank you so much for being here. And I said, Mrs. Carter, thank you for so much and for everything that you've done, and happy birthday. And she thanked me again, and then we enjoyed the rest of the barbecue together with the folks down there in Plains, and had a lovely afternoon and evening together.
Wow, that's a beautiful memory. So glad you got to have that experience with her last year. Andrew Oak, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us more about Rosalynn Carter. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Nancy.
You got it. Coming up next, we analyze the challenges facing President Biden's re-election bid and the latest from the Republican field with our panel. They're streaming America Decides. We'll be right back.
Well, let me start with this.
This really happened.
Have you told the government?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
You want me to just
What's
keep
wrong
going?
with that argument?
What have you learned?
Do you know why?
Why? Why?
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
You had a substitute teacher that was pretty popular. What was his reputation?
Everyone loved him.
You had to miss a test. What did he offer to have you make up the test?
He said that I can come by after school was all over and just take the exam. The blinds were down. He closed the door. The next thing I knew, he was right next to me. That's when I realized what was going to happen. Even if I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs, no one would hear me because no one was there. He told me that if I ever said anything to anyone, he would kill me and he would kill my family. So I did it.
Pledge of Silence, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
He was there when the war in Ukraine started.
Extreme history. It's a big moment.
The extraordinary story behind Sean Penn's new Paramount Plus documentary, Superpower, when we go person to person.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Why did you miss the moment?
I'm not sure why they missed the moment.
It doesn't look like Congress is doing anything. That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. That means a civil conversation with perspective.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
And by the way, it's my birthday today, and they can actually sing birthday music. I just want you to know it's difficult turning 60.
Welcome back to America Decides. That was President Biden poking fun at his own age as he turns 81 today. It comes as a new NBC poll finds the president's support among young voters dropped 15 percentage points since September. Deepa Shivram and Braxton Booker join us now to discuss. Deepa is a White House correspondent for NPR, and Braxton is a national political correspondent for Politico. Welcome to you both. Let's start out by talking about this big drop in young voters, obviously a critical constituency for Democrats in particular. Deepa, how much do you think this has to do with the fact that, this all comes amid tensions between Israel and Hamas, and the president coming down firmly on the side of Israel?
Yeah, this is definitely very much tied to that. I think this is a poll that has showed for a while there's been a lack of enthusiasm among younger voters when it comes to Joe Biden. But as this international situation has unfolded, there's a lot of criticism among young voters about how President Biden has sided with Israel unequivocally and has been a little bit late to the game. A lot of younger voters I've spoken to would say, even talking about civilian casualties in Gaza, something that they felt a little flippant about in the past several weeks, maybe not paying as much attention to that, not focusing on that. We've seen protests around the country, large ones in D.C., large ones in other places all over the United States, where young voters are really turning up to say, we don't agree with this administration. And now what we're seeing is polling to back that up. And so there is a really big gap with how much younger voters in that demographic of 18 to 34 years old, as this poll pointed out, in terms of how they feel about how the president has handled this crisis and versus how the White House is really moving forward with this.
Braxton, what can the White House do to course correct? I mean, I've noticed that the president and everyone on down has been careful recently to say, bombings at hospitals need to stop. We're very concerned about Palestinian civilians. In fact, in the White House briefing today, John Kirby point blank said there have been too many civilian casualties, which is something that they haven't said that explicitly until now. It does seem like they're trying to make a change here.
Well, look, they're trying to make a change, but I think what you need to see from this president is you need to see him get outside of Washington and take his message to the people. I mean, you talk about the protests happening. You're also seeing protests happening on college campuses where young voters are. You would think that the president will want to get out into the field and have conversations with young voters and talk to them about what the administration is doing, right? So far, we're not seeing that. We're seeing this kind of like bubble wrap of this president and make sure that he stays in the White House, make sure that they can control all aspects of the message right now. Right. And I don't think you can play it safe at this point. We're seeing that the poll numbers are going south for this president.
Right. The campaign clearly feels that they have time to get him out on the road and doing rallies and things like that. Does that suggest to you that they just aren't concerned about the possibility of a third-party candidate like Joe Manchin or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at all?
I mean, I definitely think what you hear from the White House, what you hear from the campaign is taking this question of Biden and his age and concerns about that and turning that into the word experience, right? That there couldn't be a better time to have Joe Biden as president of the United States and be reelected as president of the United States because of the vast experience he has dealing with foreign policy issues in particular, dealing with a lot of other domestic crises. This is something that, you know, in his years and years of public service and in elected office, he has dealt with. And so you hear the campaign trying to spin that message that this is a president who has a lot of experience doing these things, but clearly it's not lining up with certain people. His approval ratings overall definitely not as high as they could be less than a year out from an election. And so it's really interesting to see that balance of what the White House thinks is their best talking points moving forward and really where it's translating with voters. And I think it's also interesting to see how the White House is going to use Kamala Harris, the vice president, in this talk forward as she's been traveling to college campuses, as she's been trying to reach younger voters, how she'll be utilized and her popularity there as well.
And Braxton, the White House keeps arguing, the campaign keeps arguing that people just aren't plugged in yet to politics, and that once they realize that this is a binary choice between President Biden and former President Trump, that the choice will not be more stark and that people will come back to the president. What do you make of that argument, especially as we see former President Trump say some really surprising things, even for him, over the past couple of weeks, that analysts have described as a foray into fascism, the way he's talking about, rooting out anybody who doesn't agree with him, sicking the Justice Department on people who are too popular or who don't take the party line. Is that kind of proving the Biden administration's point?
I'm not sure it's proving the Biden administration's point right now, but I think Democrats will largely point to, we've been here before, right? You look back at 2011 when Obama was running for re-election, and there were polls that had Romney with him in a dead heat, and he was able to pull that out. I think they're saving grace and saying, hey, we're a year out. People are just starting to pay attention to our elected politics, but what really is happening here is this is a referendum on the Biden administration. This is not really about Trump at this point. This is about what has Biden done for the American people, and is he delivering on the thesis of his campaign that he is the steady hand here? Right now, it is not proving out that he is the steady hand, and that world leaders are just going to listen to everything that that President Biden is going to is trying to say and try to guide them in certain directions. So right now, Biden has some work to do, but there is time to deliver on that message.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch, especially now that we know that there are debates scheduled for next year. We'll see if both of those candidates actually show up to all three of them. Deepa, Braxton, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
An appeals court is weighing arguments over the gag order issued in Donald Trump's 2020 federal election subversion case. Attorneys for the former president and federal prosecutors faced off in front of a 3-judge panel this morning for more than 2 hours. The gag order is currently on hold. It would prevent Trump and his lawyers from disparaging court personnel and potential witnesses. Trump has argued the gag order violates his constitutional rights. Well, there was no foul play at this year's presidential turkey pardon, and get ready for more puns like that, because coming up, CBS News gets up close with an exclusive look at one of the lucky birds. You're streaming America Decides.
Why did you want to share your story?
Water up this high?
Where are these coming from?
That's the million-dollar question.
I'm a very curious person. I wake up every morning asking what's happening in the world, why is this happening, and how do we answer that question on the CBS Evening News?
An original documentary from CBS reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We aim every night to be factual and fair. That's our goal.
An original documentary from CBS reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Since childhood, she never stopped reaching for the skies. Now she's spent more time in space than any other American.
I like being a part of something bigger than me.
Peggy Whitson's extraordinary career as a history-making astronaut when we go person to person.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell.
I think I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se. Why aren't you holding yourself to that standard? It doesn't look like Congress is doing anything. What has to happen? That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. And that means a civil conversation with perspective.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. The nation has enjoyed the presidential turkey pardon for more than 3 decades, and today was no different. The first documented White House turkey pardon was performed by President John F. Kennedy in 1963, but the tradition did not become an annual occurrence until 1989 under President George H.W. Bush. Since then, dozens of turkeys have been pardoned at the White House, and the tradition continued today when 2 lucky turkeys, named Liberty and Belle, were pardoned by President Biden on Monday afternoon on the South Lawn. Our colleague, Ed O'Keefe, another lucky duck, nabbed a coveted interview with one of the birds, along with the chairman of the National Turkey Federation, Steve Licken.
So how on earth is it that you got you and your birds here today to be pardoned by the president?
So as chairman of the National Turkey Federation, it is our honor to have this opportunity to raise the birds. So these birds were hatched in the first week of July. And so they're about 20 weeks old. Liberty here weighs about 42 pounds.
Is that all?
Yep, and he made it here by private coach, of course, black stretch Escalade. And took about 3 days, so we like to give them time to stretch their legs and everything so that they're comfortable. But
I would have thought they'd take the gravy train.
I know, yeah, exactly right.
20 weeks.
20 weeks.
And how did you pick the 2 to bring to Washington?
So it's a great question. So our team of live production professionals that work with them every day are just really making observations. Are they easily agitated? Are they anytime they hear a loud noise, for instance, we're wanting to acclimate them. We let them listen to a lot of music. I can confirm they are Swifties and they do enjoy some Prince now and then.
Really? Well, they're from Minnesota, I would hope so.
Yeah, lots of different toys for them to interact with, and then they just make observations as to their behavior, and we want them to feel comfortable and confident, and you see them strutting accordingly.
So they've now been pardoned.
Yes.
Is this a lifetime pardon or is this a one-year pardon?
No, it's a lifetime pardon, so they're going to spend the rest of their days at the University of Minnesota at what they call their College for Food and Ag Sciences, otherwise known as CFANS, and so they're going to make their way back to Minnesota here, leaving sometime later today, actually.
And they live out their life
reading,
just hanging
maybe they'll
out?
catch a hockey game, hang out with Goldie the Gopher. No, as you can imagine, so they'll have veterinary students there and faculty. They'll have the very best possible care, and they'll probably get to meet some new people as well.
That is a remarkably well-behaved turkey. I didn't hear a single gobble. Ed O'Keefe, the right man for the job, and Steve Licken, thanks to both of you. Speaking of presidential holiday traditions, the 2023 White House Christmas tree has arrived in Washington, D.C. The 18.5-foot Fraser fir comes from Fleetwood, North Carolina. It was greeted at the White House Monday by First Lady Jill Biden and U.S. military families. The first known White House Christmas tree was set up in 1889. The first to have electronic lights on it was in 1894. Officials say this year's White House tree will be placed in the famed Blue Room. Well, that does it for today. You're streaming CBS News. I'm Nancy Cordes. Thanks for watching.
On Face the Nation, the way to learn is to listen.
We may have a recession.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.